The essay, Don't Be the Frog, begins with the well-known metaphor of the boiling frog, a creature that, when placed in gradually heated water, fails to recognize the danger until it is too late. This parable, though scientifically dubious, serves as a powerful allegory for complacency in the face of creeping danger. Whether it's a failing business, an abusive relationship, or a society sleepwalking toward tyranny, the story warns of the human tendency to ignore gradual change until catastrophe is inevitable. The author uses this image to frame an urgent discussion about democracy in the United States, particularly the nation's response to Donald Trump's presidency, his return to power following the 2024 election, and the peril of normalization in the face of escalating authoritarian behavior. The Frog and the American Democracy. During Trump's first term, many Americans dismissed the possibility that democracy could truly unravel. Even as democratic institutions were tested, through attacks on the press, judicial independence, and electoral integrity, many citizens preferred to look away. Ignoring the danger seemed easier than confronting the terrifying prospect that the American experiment might fail. The 2020 election, in which voters turned Trump out of office, seemed at first like a reprieve, a chance for the nation to jump out of the boiling pot. Yet when Trump returned to the White House in 2025, the metaphorical water was already heating up again. Instead of recognizing the danger, many citizens resumed their denial, seeking comfort in distraction and normalcy. The essay insists that democracy doesn't collapse overnight, it erodes slowly, through incremental encroachments on rights and norms. The refusal to notice these shifts is precisely what enables tyranny. Madison, Montesquieu, and the Architecture of Democracy. To understand why vigilance is so vital, the essay looks back to the origins of the U.S. Constitution and the ideas that shaped it. In 1788, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay published the Federalist Papers under the pseudonym Publius to persuade states to ratify the new Constitution. Among these essays, Madison's Federalist No. 51, titled The Structure of the Government Must Furnish the Proper Checks and Balances Between the Different Departments, laid out the core design of American democracy. Madison, drawing heavily from the French philosopher Montesquieu, insisted that power must be divided among three independent branches, executive, legislative, and judicial, to prevent tyranny. Montesquieu's concept of trias politica, or separation of powers, was grounded in the belief that government be so constituted as one man need not be afraid of another. Madison echoed this in his famous line, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary." Both thinkers recognized that unchecked power, whether held by a monarch, a president, or a parliament, leads inevitably to despotism. The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, Madison wrote in Federalist No. 47, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. For many years, these words seemed like distant civics lessons, obvious truths of a stable system. But as Trump's second administration began consolidating power and bypassing constitutional limits, Madison's warnings returned with alarming relevance. The executive power grab. In the early months of Trump's second term, the administration issued over 140 executive orders, an unprecedented wave of unilateral directives that bypassed Congress. These orders targeted everything from birthright citizenship to the Department of Education and the Justice Department. Democratic state attorneys general quickly recognized the danger. They coordinated lawsuits across the country, challenging the president's attempts to expand executive authority beyond its constitutional bounds. The cases varied in subject matter: immigration, funding freezes, censorship, and civil rights, but all shared a single aim: to preserve the balance of power. In just 2 months, over 100 lawsuits were filed by states, civil rights groups, and individuals harmed by these measures. Their collective effort reflected an urgent understanding that the judiciary must act as the nation's thermostat, to detect rising authoritarian heat and intervene before democracy boils away. Trump's attack on the legal profession. Recognizing that the courts posed the most significant obstacle to his consolidation of power, Trump turned his attention to the legal system itself. Drawing inspiration perhaps from Shakespeare's famous line in Henry, "First thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers," he sought to neutralize those capable of challenging him in court. Beginning in March 2025, Trump issued a series of executive orders targeting prominent law firms. The first, directed at Covington and Burling, accused the firm of providing free legal advice to special counsel Jack Smith, who had previously charged Trump in criminal cases. Next came attacks on Perkins Coie, Paul, Weiss, Jenner and Block, Sussman, Godfrey and Wilmer Hale, firms that had either represented Democrats or handled cases adverse to Trump's interests. Each order followed a similar playbook: revoke the firm's federal contracts, strip their lawyers of security clearances, deny them access to federal facilities, and accuse their diversity programs of racial discrimination. The move was a transparent act of retaliation, a weaponization of executive authority for personal revenge. Some firms, fearing ruin, capitulated. Paul Weiss negotiated a deal with the administration to avoid further penalties, and others quietly followed. Yet a handful refused to bow. They challenged the orders in court, and so far the lower courts have ruled these actions unconstitutional. Still, the episode revealed how fragile institutional independence can be under sustained political pressure. Trump's language in these orders was vindictive and theatrical. In his directive against Wilmer Hale, he accused the firm of abandoning the profession's highest ideals and blamed former partner Robert Mueller for upending the lives of public servants. His rhetoric wasn't about safeguarding national security or public ethics, it was about settling old scores. These measures represented not just an assault on individual firms, but on the judiciary's ability to function as an independent branch of government. Delegitimizing the courts. The legal profession and the judiciary are the twin pillars of the rule of law. Undermining either one weakens democracy. Undermining both risks collapse. The Trump administration began promoting the idea that courts should not second-guess presidential decisions, a claim that defies centuries of constitutional tradition. On social media and in speeches, Trump's allies derided judicial review as a judicial coup, suggesting that judges who ruled against the president were enemies of the people. As Trump's immigration crackdown met legal resistance, tensions escalated. A whistleblower from the Department of Justice alleged that senior official Emil Bove told subordinates the department might have to tell the courts "fuck you" and carry out deportations even if judges issued contrary orders. This marked a profound rupture with constitutional norms. The administration's position was clear: courts had no authority to constrain the president. Supporters even floated the idea of impeaching judges who blocked Trump's policies. These efforts represented an attempt to delegitimize the judiciary itself, an essential check envisioned by the founders. History, tradition, and judicial review. The Supreme Court in recent years has invoked history and tradition to justify its rulings, most notably in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, 2022, which overturned Roe v. Wade and stripped women of the federal right to abortion. Justice Samuel Alito's opinion leaned on 17th-century English jurist Matthew Hale, who denied the existence of marital rape and sentenced women to death as witches. If the court truly believes that precedent must rest on historical tradition, the essay argues, then it should also honor the long-established principle of judicial review, the right of courts to check the president's power. This principle traces back to one of the earliest and most defining cases in American law, Marbury v. Madison, 1803. Marbury v. Madison, the birth of judicial review. The essay recounts the origins of Marbury v. Madison to illustrate how the judiciary first claimed its constitutional authority. The case arose from the bitter transfer of power between President John Adams and his successor Thomas Jefferson, following the contentious election of 1800. In his final days in office, Adams pushed through the Judiciary Act of 1801, creating new judgeships that he quickly filled with Federalist allies, infamously dubbed the Midnight Appointments. One such appointee, William Marbury, never received his commission before Jefferson took office. Jefferson ordered his Secretary of State, James Madison, to withhold the document, denouncing Adams's actions as an outrage on decency. Marbury sued, asking the Supreme Court to issue a writ of mandamus, an order compelling Madison to deliver the commission. Chief Justice John Marshall faced a dilemma. If he ordered Madison to act and the administration refused, the court would appear powerless. If he declined, the judiciary would seem subservient to the executive. Marshall's solution was ingenious. He ruled that Marbury was entitled to his position, but that the court lacked the constitutional authority to issue the order because the Judiciary Act of 1789, which granted that power, was itself unconstitutional. In declaring a congressional law void, Marshall established the doctrine of judicial review, the court's right and duty to determine whether government actions comply with the Constitution. It is emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is, Marshall wrote. The Constitution, he held, is the supreme law of the land, and any law that contradicts it is void. This principle, forged in the nation's infancy, became the bedrock of American democracy. It ensures that no president, legislature, or court can act above the Constitution. The moral of the frog. Don't be the frog ultimately returns to its opening metaphor. The United States, the essay warns, is once again sitting in a pot that grows warmer by the day. The danger is not only in the heat but in the human instinct to acclimate to rationalize each new abuse as temporary or tolerable. Madison and Montesquieu designed a system meant to prevent tyranny, but that system depends on active participation. Lawyers filing cases, judges ruling independently, citizens paying attention. When people grow numb to incremental change, the constitutional water begins to simmer. The author's message is both historical and urgent. America's democracy will not be destroyed in a single stroke but boiled away through complacency. Avoiding that fate requires vigilance, courage, and a refusal to normalize the erosion of checks and balances. In the end, the essay is a call to awareness. To preserve liberty, citizens must notice when the water is heating and jump.